In my last video, I asked the question, why do people cruise Royal Caribbean to Alaska? I tried hard to come up with a reason and found one. And now, in part two, we look at the other lines and how they compare. Are there any other options that are an even better value? Let's take a look. Hey, welcome to This is the Cruise. I'm Clint, and this is the channel where we look at upcoming cruise itineraries and try to find out if this is the cruise for you. I love cruising, and I really love visiting new places. So we cruise as a way to see the world, and that's the focus of this channel, trying to uncover the itineraries that provide the most value through the lens of exploration and discovery. I've created a comprehensive scoring system that considers both the quality of the destinations and the variety of places visited. I'll leave a link in the description below to a video where I describe all those factors. Today we're looking at the best 2025-2026 7-day Alaska itineraries for each line. I'm going to break it down by mainstream cruise lines and premium lines. We're not going to look at Disney or the luxury lines. But do comment below if you'd like to see any of their itineraries covered in a future video. So I'm going to pick out the best itinerary from each line and let you know why I'd maybe avoid some of the itineraries as well. Plus, I've got a couple of surprises. Let's recap the one reason why I think you should pick Royal Caribbean for Alaska. The bottom line for me is because you just like Royal Caribbean. I've cruised them a few times and I've always had a great experience and excellent service. Honestly, though, we haven't cruised their mega ships. Every time we look at those options, the prices are too high and there's not enough value with the destinations for us. And this is true regardless of the region or area you're cruising. For example, an Oasis class ship often costs more for a similar itinerary than, say, Princess or Holland America, even Celebrity sometimes. Not always, but often. The other big reason is what has become the purpose of this channel. We cruise more for the destinations than the ships. And Royal has some of the best ships, no doubt. But because they're so big, they can't visit the places we want to go. They can only go to the places everyone else can get to. And if we can get to those places for less money on an upscale line, while still having a nice ship and great service, it makes it hard for us to justify the extra cost. But that's us. I totally get that. For some people, it is about the ship. And that's why you'd cruise to Alaska on Royal Caribbean. It's because you want to be on that ship by this cruise line, and it just happens to be sailing to Alaska. But here on this channel, we focus on itineraries. So if Alaska is the purpose of your trip, not the ship, then how do you get the most Alaska for your cruise dollar? Well, let's talk about why you'd cruise to Alaska to begin with. Obviously, the glaciers, the mountains, the wildlife, so many whales, right? Let's not forget the food, Alaskan salmon, and of course, the amazing people and culture. These are the reasons to cruise to Alaska. And there may be others. If you have some other reasons that I didn't mention, let me know in the comments below. All right, the Alaska cruises we're looking at here are all 7-day itineraries. That means you won't be getting deep into the heart of Alaska and you won't go very far north unless you go with a one-way itinerary, and even those are limited. Alaska is so big, there's not enough time in 7 days to cruise very far. Let's take a quick look at a map to kind of get our bearings. For embarkation, you're going to leave from generally one of two cities. One of them is Seattle. Seattle's really nice. It's a nice place to embark your cruise. There's a ton of things to do before and after you cruise, and it's easily accessible for those of us in the US. The only issues I have with leaving from Seattle is that you'll be required to stop in Canada, and you likely won't cruise the Inside Passage, which is really nice. The other primary embarkation city is Vancouver, and Vancouver is beautiful. There's a lot to do as well, plus you'll likely cruise the Inside Passage. The only real issue I have with Vancouver as an embarkation port is that the port itself can be a bit chaotic at times, and that may be an understatement. One-way itineraries that I mentioned earlier will begin or end in Alaska at either Seward, those are one-way itineraries on Celebrity and Royal Caribbean, or Whittier, those would be the one-way itineraries or cruises on Holland America, Princess, or Norwegian Cruise Line. Have you been to both of those ports, Seward or Whittier? If so, what was your favorite? Let me know. I'd like to hear about it. The lines all visit the same destinations in some configuration or another. Let's take a quick look at the destinations in Alaska. Up first is Ketchikan. One thing to note about Ketchikan is that you may not be docked downtown. I'll point that out as we go through some of these itineraries. Next, of course, is the state capital, Juneau. I love this city, and every single one of these itineraries stop here. I was called out one time, though, for saying that it was the only state capital that you couldn't drive to. You have to fly or sail on a ship. Technically, yes, you can't drive from the lower 48 states to Honolulu either, but you can get there from other cities on that island. I go to Oahu every few years and never stay in Honolulu, but we do drive into Honolulu, the city, and visit every time we're in there. Then there's Sitka. This is one of my personal favorites because it feels more natural, more organic, particularly if you get out of kind of the main shopping district. You won't be docked downtown for sure, but there will be free shuttle buses that take you from the pier into the city. Icy Strait Point is another destination. It's scenic, but also feels a bit like visiting an Alaskan version of a cruise line private island. It's got zip lines, gondola rides, and more. But you can get out of the main touristy area and over to Huna to get a more cultural and enriching experience. I do have fond memories of walking around Icy Strait Point, but we were the only ship there, so it wasn't crowded at all. Skagway is a favorite by many. The train is a highly sought after excursion, so if you're going and you want to ride the train, book it early, as soon as you can. Haines, Alaska is in the same area as Skagway and an alternative stop to Skagway. Sometimes you'll see Skagway with Haines in parentheses. That means you're stopping in Haines, not Skagway. Be careful when booking though, because if Skagway is where you really want to go, make sure you're stopping in Skagway. As I mentioned, if you sail from Seattle, you'll also have to stop in Canada. Victoria, British Columbia is going to be the most common, and often your stop will only be for a few hours. Likely you'll be arriving after 8 p.m. and then leaving sometime close to midnight. Prince Rupert, British Columbia is an alternative and would be my preference. It's very pretty, and there's a lot to do here, a lot of great hiking, for example. Nanaimo, British Columbia on Vancouver Island is an interesting stop with one itinerary visiting. We'll see that one later in the video. Okay, on to the main event, the glaciers. Up first is Tracy Arm. Royal Caribbean, Holland America, and Carnival explicitly list visiting Tracy Arm as a destination. Endicott Arm and Dawes Glacier is another one. Princess, Holland America, Norwegian, Celebrity, Royal Caribbean, not Carnival, all state that they visit Endicott Arm and Dawes Glacier. I will note that sometimes a line will say Tracy Arm, but they end up visiting Endicott Arm and or Dawes Glacier, or the other way around. Usually weather's the deciding factor here. The point being that Alaska can be unpredictable. Hubbard Glacier, which is part of Wrangell St. Elias National Park and Preserve, is visited by Norwegian, Holland America, Princess Cruise Line, Royal Caribbean, and Celebrity, and is a massive glacier. Definitely on one of the bucket list to visit glaciers. College Fjord could be visited while you're on your way to Whittier. Holland America and Princess visit College Fjord. And finally, Glacier Bay, which is Glacier Bay National Park. This is really only accessible by boat. There are other ways you could fly in there, but really, this is your best way to visit Glacier Bay. Holland America, Princess, and Norwegian Cruise Line are the only cruise lines that visit Glacier Bay that are the major lines. My advice is to book what you hope to see. There's no guarantee the cruise line will do what is safest. If you don't get to see that glacier or visit that port, don't be upset. It was your best shot. Just make the most of the cruise. I mean, you could be at work or at home on a staycation. This is definitely better. All right, do you have a favorite glacier? Let me know in the comments below. I want to hear what is your favorite glacier that you visited. I will say if this is your first cruise to Alaska, I highly, highly recommend trying to get something that has both Skagway for its incredible beauty. They're all pretty, but Skagway is exceptional. And Glacier Bay for the exclusivity and multiple opportunities to see glaciers in this incredible national park. All right, let's get some of these itineraries to avoid out of the way. To make it a bit easier, let's assume you at least want to have one glacier in your cruise. You just want to visit one glacier. If that's the case, I want you to try to avoid these sailings. The 7-night Alaska Experience cruise on Quantum of the Seas on September 15th and September 22nd, 2025. The 7-night Alaska Experience cruise on Anthem of the Seas on May 11th, May 25th, and September 21st, 2026. The 7-night Alaska Experience cruise on Voyager of the Seas, there are 8 sailings in 2026. The 7-night Alaska Inside Passage cruise on Serenade of the Seas, May 10th and May 17th, 2026. That's it. Otherwise, I feel confident you'll have a great cruise. But wait, you may have noticed that those are all on Royal Caribbean. If you love Royal and don't care about glaciers at all, then don't worry about it, right? You'll have a great time. Just pick the ship you want to be on that you can afford, of course. But what about the other lines? Anything to really avoid? Nope. They all visit glaciers except for one, and that's on Holland America, but that one needs a bit more of an examination. So stay tuned, we'll get to that in a moment. All right, let's get to the best itinerary for each cruise line. I'm going to go through each line's best Alaska itinerary for 2025 and 2026. After we've looked at them, I'll do a price score comparison too. So stay tuned. That gets pretty eye opening, I gotta say. All right, we'll begin with the mainstream cruise lines first, then move on to the premium cruise lines. Let's level set and recap Royal Caribbean. The best itinerary they have is the 7-night Alaska Inside Passage cruise on Serenade of the Seas from Vancouver. It visits Sitka, Juneau, and Ketchikan, and for glaciers, you'll get Tracy Arm and Hubbard Glacier. This is an excellent itinerary, getting a Clinch Cruisability score of 85.94. But there are two problems. It's only sailing one time on August 31st, 2025, and when I checked right now, the balconies are sold out. Personally, I don't have any issue staying in an interior room, even for Alaska, but that's me. And we tend to sail on ships that are more conducive for scenic cruising, offering a lot of viewing areas outside of the room. I can't really speak for Royal Caribbean in that regard. The other problem is that it's on one of the smaller and older Royal Caribbean ships. What if you want to be on one of the mega ships, one of the new ones with all the stuff? Because that's why you're cruising Royal Caribbean, right? Your best option is the 7 nights Alaska Adventure Cruise on Anthem of the Seas from Seattle. It visits Ketchikan, Sitka, and Juneau, and for a glacier, you'll get Endicott Arm and Dawes Glacier. There are 4 sailings in 2026, June 22nd, July 20th, August 17th, and August 24th. This is an average itinerary, honestly, and gets a Clinch Cruisability score of 72.6. Well, how about the fun ships? We've cruised Carnival a lot because they've tended to be the best value for a vacation for us when our kids were really young. I don't usually think of them for Alaska, but they do have some options, so let's take a look. The best one is the 7-day Alaska Inside Passage and Glacier from Seattle. This is on the Carnival Spirit, and you'll visit Skagway, Juneau, and Ketchikan. Then you'll find glaciers on your sailing through Tracy Arm Fjord. One thing that's nice is that there are 21 sailings in 2025 and 20 in 2026. There's something a bit surprising about this one, though. So when we do that cost comparison at the end, I want you to check out where this one lands. This gets a Clinch Cruisability score. It's respectable at 73.3. Spirit is a smaller ship for Carnival, but about the same size and age of Royal Caribbean's Serenity. I take either of Royal Caribbean's itinerary over this one, particularly when we get to that cost comparison. Okay, now we're going to bump up our score with Norwegian. That's because they do have the ability to visit Glacier Bay. Norwegian's highest scoring itinerary is the 7-day Alaska, Glacier Bay, Skagway, and Juneau. That's the name of the itinerary on Norwegian Bliss. There are 7 dates in 2025 and 2 in 2026. So, not a lot of flexibility there, but there are some options at least. You'll sail from Seattle and visit Juneau, of course, Ketchikan, Skagway, and Victoria in Canada for just a few hours. Of course, your glacier is going to be Glacier Bay. One thing I don't really care for with cruising Norwegian is that when you visit Ketchikan, you won't be docking right downtown. You'll be in Ward Cove and have to take the shuttle into town. It's just due to space and where the ship can fit. So that's where you'll be. This itinerary gets a solid Clint's cruisability score of 77.8. I have friends who took this itinerary a couple years ago on Norwegian. They had an amazing time. It was their first and only cruise to Alaska, and they were like, "This was incredible. We loved it." And honestly, I think you would too. I'd most likely take this over the others, maybe with the exception of that Royal Caribbean Serenade of the Seas that sold out, or likely sold out. This one's really nice. Let's move on, though, to the premium cruise lines and see if they're offering anything better. And we'll start with Celebrity, Royal Caribbean's premium sister company. The best option is the 7 nights Alaska Hubbard Glacier cruise on Celebrity Solstice. You'll sail round trip from Vancouver and visit Icy Strait Point, Juneau, and Ketchikan. For Glacier, you'll visit Hubbard Glacier, so that will be really nice. You'll notice we're missing Skagway, though. It also docks downtown Ketchikan, which is great. This one gets a Clint's cruisability score of 79.10, and looking at the price is tempting. Okay, we'll move on to another premium line that's sailing Alaska more than anyone, at least from what I can tell. They were also the second cruise line ever to start sailing Alaska itineraries, so they have a lot of experience. And of course, I'm talking about Princess. But Princess has a major problem with their website. It's my biggest nemesis for research. Let me show you what I mean. Let's quick look at this itinerary. I'm just pulled one up. It looks like we're visiting both Endicott Arm and Dawes Glacier. I mean, the map shows both, but the itinerary will be one or the other for sure. So you have to click into the itinerary to find out where you're going and confirm which glacier you're going to be visiting. One-way itineraries have the same problem. They show all the possible destinations and glaciers on the map. Again, you have to select the date and look at the itinerary to confirm where you're going. This is honestly really frustrating and feels a bit misleading to me. I'm a visual person and I often just glance at a map to quickly see where we're going. I don't like this at all. Princess, you got to get this fixed. You got to stop doing this. Okay, sorry for the digression. Let's get back to it. Technically, the highest scoring Princess itineraries are those northbound and southbound one-way itineraries, and they score around 87.5. That's quite respectable. But let's focus on the round trips. The best round trip Princess itinerary is the 7-day Inside Passage with Glacier Bay National Park. It's round trip from Vancouver on Coral Princess. There are 3 sailings in 2025. You'll start in Vancouver, visit Juneau, Skagway, and Ketchikan with a visit to Glacier Bay, of course. Coral Princess also docks downtown Ketchikan, which is really nice. This itinerary gets a Clint's cruisability score of 82.58. Okay, before I move on to the highest scoring itinerary, let me give you a couple of honorable mentions. I've got 2 of them. First is the Princess 7-day Inside Passage with Glacier Bay National Park, Seattle to Vancouver. It's on the Royal Princess and it sails on September 20th, 2025 and May 2nd, 2026. I like this one because you get both Seattle and Vancouver in what's technically a one-way itinerary because it's officially a repositioning cruise. But you're barely repositioned, right? Seattle to Vancouver, they're like right next to each other practically. You'll visit Ketchikan, Skagway, and Juneau with a sailing of Glacier Bay. And this one gets a Clint's cruisability score of 83.82. I just couldn't consider it as a round trip because technically it's not a round trip, but it's pretty nice. Another honorable mention is one from Holland, America. This one is really interesting. They call it an Alaskan itinerary, and it is actually Holland America's lowest scoring Alaska itinerary. It's the 7-day Great Bear Rainforest on the Noordam with one sailing on October 5th, 2025. There are no glaciers, but it's really more of a Southwest Canada cruise that cruises some very interesting and out of the way places that other itineraries don't. That includes Nanaimo and going through the Seymour Narrows, which really requires a smaller ship. This itinerary is really interesting if you want something different. It's a lot of scenic cruising for those of you who want to get on a ship, get great service, and just relax while you admire some incredible scenery. You'll leave from Seattle. You do get up to Ketchikan, and that's the only Alaska stop. You'll also visit Prince Rupert, Nanaimo, as I mentioned, and Victoria, which are all in Canada. And again, there are no glacier visits, but it's a lot of gorgeous scenic cruising. This one gets a Clint's Cruisability score of 70.5. So it's definitely on the lower side of what we looked at today. Okay, I haven't said it yet this whole video. I've been holding back. If you like the content, if you enjoy it, please hit that like button. Really appreciate if you subscribe. There's a lot of ways you can support the channel. You can actually join the channel and become a member. It's only $1 a month, and you're going to get all of the, I think I'm going to put it on this side, all of these benefits and bonuses, including beta access to my app that I use for all my scoring and all the data. So a little bit of an inside peek. If I've helped you pick an itinerary maybe, or come to a decision, or maybe even look at things a little bit differently, consider buying me a cup of coffee. There's a safe and secure link in the description below, and you can just think of it as, we went out for a drink. Really appreciate that. And of course, I have some cruising merch, so you can cruise in style from my store. Feel free to do some shopping there, and I really appreciate it. Thank you very much. And now for our top scoring Alaska itinerary. The highest scoring itinerary is by the line who has been cruising Alaska longer than any other line. It's Holland America's 7-day Alaska Inside Passage on the Koningsdam. I've actually spent months of time on the Koningsdam. You'll leave from Vancouver, visit Juneau, Skagway, and Ketchikan with a visit to both Tracy Arm and Glacier Bay. Holland sails this cruise 18 times in 2025 and 22 times in 2026. So you have plenty of opportunities to get on this itinerary, get on this cruise. This one gets a Clint's Cruisability score of 88.58. Okay, as I mentioned earlier, let's take a look at how cost factors into this. What happens when we kind of cross-reference the cost and the score for these cruises? Just, as a disclaimer, these are current as of the time I filmed this and are per person prices. I just grabbed the cheapest price available for the itinerary, regardless of date, from the cruise line's website. I didn't shop it hard, right? So it just kind of gave us a point of comparison. Obviously, peak season cruising costs more on multiple sailings, and there are a lot of variations for different room classes and within classes and all of that. But this should give you an idea of the overall value. So let's take a look. The average score of all of the itineraries is 80.2, with about $1,000 per person for an interior room and about $1,750 for a balcony. So out of curiosity, would you stay in an interior room? I mentioned that we do. In fact, we typically do. I don't have any problem with that. Cruising to Alaska, cruising to Norway, Iceland, we stayed in interior rooms. This is particularly true, though, when we're looking at this average price. It's about $1,500 on average more for two people to stay in a balcony for a 7-day cruise. That $1,500 could be used, for a couple of pretty amazing excursions. Again, that's me. Also, let's not forget that $1,500 extra could make it impossible for some people, many people, to even go on an Alaskan cruise to begin with. And I would rather go in an interior room than not go at all. So don't break your budget. It's worth cruising Alaska in an interior room if that's what you can afford. Don't let people get you down by making it seem like it's the only way you can enjoy Alaska by being on a balcony. It's not fair and it's not right. So what about you? Let me know what you think. Would you not go to Alaska if you couldn't afford a balcony? If you can afford a balcony, don't tell me that you wouldn't go, right? Imagine not being able to go. And let me know, would you go in an interior room to have the chance? So let's eliminate itineraries that score below average. Wait, just before we do that, I want to point out that Celebrity just misses the cut. But look at the interior exterior prices and compare them to Royal Caribbean's prices. The interior scores higher, but the prices are practically the same. Those of you who have paused the video may have already figured out where I'm going with this. Okay, this starts to give us an eye-opening view. Royal Caribbean actually scores the second highest, and the interior price is just below average. But getting a balcony is nearly impossible, and this is a one-off itinerary. It's a shame. Every other Serenade of the Seas itinerary scores below average. This leaves us with Holland America and Princess, but if you decide to go with Princess, just be extra careful when booking and make sure that your price compares favorably against Holland America. We've cruised both Holland and Princess. For us, we personally prefer Holland America's more classic style of cruising, and honestly, no one really does Alaska like they do. Oh, and if you have one of those interior rooms, you have incredible access to amazing opportunities to view the glaciers outside. No balcony required. Princess is close, but Holland just edges them out. Okay, I hope y'all found this comparison helpful. Let me know if there's any other kinds of comparisons you'd like to see. Again, I really appreciate it if you like and subscribe. Really helps me out. In the meantime, as always, stay happy, stay healthy, stay cruising.